1935, the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
And that is it. With the crack of the bat, we are off and running. It should be a starter's pistol for these guys.
Yeah, it should be.
It's Detroit City of Champions, the podcast, and just going through all the stories of 1935, the amazing accomplishments of some astounding athletes of all makes and models,
all from the same season too, man. Yeah. That's what's crazy. It's like never-ending content because that's how big this season was.
Yeah, and then there's side stories. There's stuff that we didn't get to in each and every story.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And there's stuff that we can circle back to.
Yeah.
And then special days and anniversaries and birthdays and all kinds of stuff to cover. And we're gonna do it. I'm Jamie Flanagan,
Charles Avison.
And thank you for joining us. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, collect, follow all those podcast things and all the podcast places. Thank you for being with us. Do smash that like button.
Yeah, share it. Every comment, every like, every little
smash.
We're every little thing really helps. We really appreciate it. We're like, we got another comment.
Yeah,
we got another subscriber.
I love it's astounding when we've met a bunch of family members and relatives connected to the story. Mentions like, oh my gosh, no one ever tells us a story, and it's like, we know, that's why we're doing it.
Exactly.
And it's absolutely our honor to do so. It's my honor to hear you tell the stories, Charles, because you've done so much research on this, and I love putting it together and helping out as much as I can, and you do some astounding
Well, it's
work.
my honor to work with you, Jamie, as usual, man. The show wouldn't even be going on if it wasn't for you. You do all the production, you do all the work. I work for 4 or 5 hours, pre-show to get ready for it, but you do all the work in between the shows, and I'm grateful for it. I find myself kind of running behind on getting you stuff that you need and stuff. I'm like, I'm busy.
Hey,
man.
It's the story's been baking for how many years?
Yeah, but still, there's more I could. I'm grateful for the work you do on the show.
Yeah.
So,
and I love the stories because we hit the big three, and the next two, Hagen and Gar Wood and Muhammad. Wow, I almost said Muhammad Ali.
No,
Joe Louis. Oh my God, my brain.
Oh, you're good.
And then that's why I have you. And but we're moving into some of the other champions. And we're talking about Eddie Tolan. I love that Eddie went to Cass Tech.
Yeah.
And because this is the Detroit City of Champions. So where else would he have gone to high school?
Absolutely.
Right. So, but I love the little team picture, and it's like, oh my God, Cass Tech. And it's like, So I love that. So other champions. But part of Eddie's story, you said there was another guy. He went to Michigan, and was an astounding runner.
Yeah. So what we're talking about today is I call this a special episode because the guy we're talking about today, his name is Willis Ward.
Yeah.
And Willis Ward, he wasn't necessarily a champion in 1935. But he's contemporary with 35. You're gonna see there's all kinds of stuff. This is his era.
Sure.
And
he was on the track with
he's a major figure. And Willis Ward is like, I told myself when I was doing the books, when I was writing about Eddie Tolan, that's when I really came across him. I'd never heard of him before. I was looking into Eddie Tolan. And when you're like, you're reading about Eddie Tolan, you're putting a story together, and it's impossible not to see in the same galaxy of stardom is circulating Willis Ward. You've got your four major sort of track stars of this era.
Yeah.
Were Eddie Tolan, Jesse Owens, Ralph Metcalf, and Willis Ward. These are your four sensations of this sort of era.
Right.
And Jesse Owens has got, of course, Jesse Owens was Jesse Owens. Everybody knows about him.
So he came up last week, and there was a picture of Eddie with Jesse, and Willis was in the photo.
Willis
as well.
Ward, yeah. And so, that shows three of the main, stars of the era. Ralph Metcalf, of course, is the other guy, and he was, he raced against Eddie Tolan, and he finished second to Eddie Tolan in the 32 Olympics, and he finished second to Jesse Owens in the 36 Olympics. So Ralph Metcalf was always right there.
Is that him on the podium there?
It is
Okay.
to his to winning that silver.
Right on.
So and he was the guy that was like right with the finish with Eddie Tolan, and that like where they both set the exact same world record, but Eddie Tolan won the race.
The photo finish that got our video banned on
Did it
YouTube.
really?
Yeah, YouTube does a pretty cool thing though.
Because I saw the alert saying you got flagged. We got flagged.
Yeah.
For the listener at home, we got flagged by YouTube. We have like, you know what I mean? Like
because we played the minute
yeah.
and a half video of the photo finish, and it played it over time. And so we played it in its entirety. So that would be an episode. That was the first one. That's part 1 of Eddie Tolan. So that's 2 episodes back. If you go into the show notes, the link to the video.
Did you have to remove it, or did we still get to use it?
I removed the video. Yeah.
Oh, did you?
So,
okay.
And it's neat. YouTube says, here's your offending section is from here to here. Would you like to remove that piece?
It's exactly.
And you just click yes, and it YouTube extracts.
Oh, really?
It for you.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I had already downloaded it, edited. I edited it out, and I was going to re-upload it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I'm going to go in and look and see what this is, and YouTube did it for me. I was like, oh crap.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Well, it's all over YouTube. It's not hard to look up the
right. But the link is in there.
Good.
So if you want to see that, go 2 episodes back. And that photo finish, just amazing.
And there's also a little, Ralph Metcalf and Eddie Tolan, the 1932 Olympics photo finish. It was the first instant replay in the Olympics for track and field, where they had to go to the video to watch to play it.
But we're talking about Willis today. Willis Ward.
Yeah. And so it's all good. But I told myself when I was doing the book originally, I promised myself, like,
Willis Ward.
I was like, if there's ever any way to talk about Willis Ward, because I put a picture of him in the book with Eddie Tolan. Yeah. Because in the book you're working with parameters. You know, I mean, you're dealing with there's so many champions, there's so many stories, there's so many players.
And the thing with Prince, there's only so many column inches.
Exactly.
To work with.
The book was like the second and third book were like a total of, I think it was like 750 pages. I mean, it was huge. I mean,
J.K. Rowling, how long is this thing going to be?
Well, that's what I'm saying. As I had to establish parameters.
Sure.
You're dealing with so many different subjects. You're dealing with so many teams, so many different sports. There's so much stuff you wanted to put. You should have seen the cut room floor when it was all said and done. You're just shaving stuff up. You're like, I want to use it, but I can't. Yeah, you're under a certain limit for
Willis was there, and
Willis was there. And
perfect platform. We get to talk to him.
Exactly. But when I just mentioned about Willis Ward, the conflict of him with the Eddie Tolan was that he was outside the scope specifically of Eddie Tolan, which was the parameters. Like like my goal was not to drift into all these other subjects.
Sure.
And so what I did was subjects that I wish that I could have expanded upon more. I would do I would put a couple photos in there, especially if there was a connection like this one. I have a similar photo as the one that's on the screen right now, with Jesse Owens and Eddie Tolan and Willis Ward. I have a different version of that photo in my book, and then maybe a paragraph talking about Willis Ward and encouraging the reader to look up Willis Ward because. Okay. And I said at that time, if there's ever any chance that I ever get to expand upon Willis Ward, I will. And today's the day.
Here we are. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, in that being said, like I said, I spent all afternoon kind of getting my research, boning up on my Willis Ward, information.
Yeah.
And what I came up with was that his story is really deep. I mean, there's a lot of different coverage on him. He's a significant person, although he's not really well known today. He's a significant star. And the show that we're doing on him today is the best thing we can really do. There's so much and it goes so deep and there's so many elements to him that we're just going to do a nice little overview today on him. And then we're just going to encourage, there's a lot of stuff online you can find about Willis Ward, and there's just no way I could fit it into one episode. And I didn't want to, there's so much stuff we're still to cover. You know what I mean? So I wanted to just do one episode. So
Michigan, but we're born in
born in Alabama.
Right.
He was part of that sort of Great Migration north, right?
All right, so
along with Joe Lewis and along with Eddie Tolan and these guys,
moved to the Detroit area.
Exactly, Detroit specifically.
Okay.
Yeah, his dad, and so they moved up to Detroit. He's the youngest of 7 kids. There's 5 sisters, and he's got a brother and 5 sisters. They moved to Detroit in 1918. Willis' mother dies in 1919 when he's 7 years old.
Dang.
His father remarries in 1920 to a widow who brought 4 sons into the house. So that equals 11 kids in that household. And so the four sons were aged 15 to 22, so they're all older than Willis. But anyway, so he goes to Northwestern High School in Detroit, so which is like this, the rival of Cass Tech. And so he's another Detroit high school guy, right? He's another Detroit high school guy. And the Northwestern, Northwestern, just like sort of Cass Tech, these are, especially in Detroit, you have these are major, athletic hubs. They're they're dominant in the region. They're dominant in the region for athletics. And so Willis Ward is, spoiler alert, or whatever. Willis Ward is an incredible athlete.
Okay.
Right. And it dates
just
back.
Crushing it in high school.
He's just crushing it in high school. And it's just like.
Yeah. But did he score 6 touchdowns
he did not
in one
do that.
game?
He did not do that. But he was a football player. But he was a great football player. Yeah. And so, so he didn't. I know he's like, I scored. He goes, Eddie Tolan's like, but did you do that? Right. You can almost see him in that picture on the screen saying, hey, Willis, you're great and all, but did you do this? He's like, no,
Jesse,
I didn't do that.
Nice to meet you. Did I ever mention I scored 6 touchdowns in a football game back in high school?
Dude, if I scored 6, I would be saying the same thing. I don't think a day would go by without telling that story, man. You're like, hey, by the way, did you know this? You're like, did you see the number 6 on something or 6 cupcakes on a table or something? You're like, oh, 6 cupcakes. That reminds me. The time I scored 6 touchdowns, I would never get tired of telling that story. Yeah. So anyway, he's a star. He's a massive star in the track and field and football, similar to Eddie Tolan. He's a star, and he's potentially even a bigger football star than even Eddie Tolan is. So it's just a kind of a brief synopsis. There's even more than this, but 1929 and 1930, he leads Northwestern State to the Michigan State Class A track and field championships, both 1929-30. So he's a 2-time all city end on the football field.
Oh, cool.
He's an all state end in 1930. 1930, he's Michigan High School Athlete of the Year. 1931, he leads Northwestern to ninth straight. This is their 9th straight city track and field title. He's at the same time he sets a world interscholastic high jump record. That was like his really signature event, was the high jump.
Yeah,
he was also a tremendous sprinter and everything too. Running like under 10-second 100-yard dashes, that kind of thing. But he's also just this ridiculous leaper. And so even by the end of 1931, he's being called the greatest athlete ever developed in Detroit. Like that's the level he's being being regarded as the greatest athlete to ever come through.
Do you know what his record was for the high jump?
I've got it down here. The next little segment I'm going to talk about.
Okay.
Because I've got a nice little ratio to talk about.
I was trying to look it up as to what it is now.
Yeah, we'll get to that in 1 second.
All right.
So but here's what's interesting is that not only was he this tremendous athlete, he's a football player, he's a track and field star. Yeah. He's a big dude too. I don't have his dimensions on here, but he's look in all the pictures. He's stout, man. The guy is big. He's a big man, especially for his era.
So he's taller than both.
Yeah, he's and there's other pictures we have too, and he's got broad shoulders. It's just a fantastic physique. I mean, he's not the short like Eddie. Like you can see that. Yeah, there's a track picture of him. He is your prototypical athlete, man.
Yeah, look at him in that starter block.
Muscled up, chiseled granite. So, anyways. But what's interesting about him though is that he's an academic as well.
Oh wow!
This is not just some guy, the guy that's just got phenomenal athletic skills and he kind of rides those.
Love that.
He is a phenomenal. He is a highly intelligent individual. And so, in high school, he's nominated for senior class president, but serves as class treasurer instead. Like he's the class treasurer. There was an article that was talking about this where they were saying he owned that school.
I bet
he owned that school. Like he could have done anything he wanted to do in that school.
I'm gonna be principal today. Exactly. What do you guys think?
They're like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
You're good. Do it.
You could have the big desk. Go ahead.
Yeah. So he graduates. He graduates from Northwestern at the top of his class.
I love it.
He's the first in his family to go to college.
Nice.
And so this is so at this point, there's this dilemma for him that it's like, he's about.
I was like, and why is there an N on his sweater? Northwestern.
Those are his high school picks.
That's his high school.
Those are high school picks.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah. So anyways, so there's it's at this point he's trying to figure out which college to go to. And in our day, of course, the college is like, oh, what's the best opportunity? you're deciding on which college to go to, which is going to, give you the best potential to go to the
this
NFL.
was a different time. This was the early 30s.
Yes.
And for an African-American young man
exactly
coming out of Detroit, options were more limited.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's like, well, he's a tremendous football. He wants to play football. And that's really the big issue is, this is not mentioned anywhere in any articles that I read, but this is just pure speculation on my part. But Eddie Tolan, who came out of Cass Tech as this tremendous football player, wanted to go to went to UofM. And there's the debate. We covered the debate.
Was it an injury
episode,
or was it
racism that prevented him from playing football?
Well, plus he was quarterback.
Yeah,
he wanted to be quarterback.
Yeah, he wants to go. I mean, he wants to play football for UofM, and he played quarterback in high school at Cass Tech, right around the corner. He's a tremendous athlete, and he gets there, and they're like, "No, we just want you to run."
Well,
And so there's a debate about nobody knows exactly what the issue was, and we covered the debate on the previous episode, a couple episodes ago.
Was it racism? Was it an injury?
Exactly. But in either case, though, as Willis Ward is looking at this situation, then this is my pure speculation, though, is that with the Eddie Tolan at this exact moment is because this is 1931, about to be 32. And Eddie Tolan's well known. Eddie Tolan had just gone through the whole Cass Tech situation. He's just getting out of UofM, about to run in the Olympics.
Yeah.
And his story about going to UofM would have been well known to Willis Ward at this moment.
Yeah, that's the success.
And so he's
story.
like, here's a guy that went to UofM and he was a tremendous guy at football. And this is speculation on my part. This is not like written about in any article. But using the context of what we've discussed previously, it's not that great. That's not that big of a leap of imagination to say that's a pun intended. Yeah. So we're not going that far out on a limb to speculate and say that the idea of Eddie Tolan going to UofM and not being able to play football may have weighed heavily on his mind, because initially Willis Ward doesn't go to UofM, which is a natural fit. It's right around the corner.
Yeah.
They have a tremendous track, program, tremendous football team as well. They're a tremendous team. They've been winning national championships like every other year for decades. I mean, this is probably the biggest, football program in the country.
Yeah.
And it rates right down the street, and so so it's an obvious fit, but he's like, well, I'm not going to get a chance to play football in college. And so why would I go there? And so he's talking about, so initially he was going to go to Dartmouth. And so here's so I have an article that does a really good idea or a really good job of summarizing this up. And this is a really highly recommended, UofM has done an absolute ton of work on Willis Ward.
Oh, did they really?
UofM. This is because this is what.
So spoiler, he went to UofM.
Spoiler alert. Yeah. I just blew the whole episode, and you blew it for pointing it out. I might have been able to skate by about it, but anyways,
rewind.
This is going to be
I'll cut it out in post.
This is going to be what we're about to dive into is going to be sort of the crux of the Willis Ward story, which is Willis Ward is basically breaking color barriers at UofM. That's like his real, one of his significance but the thing is as we're going to find out here, it's, especially by the end of his story, he's breaking color barriers, but the legacy is in sort of an open-ended legacy. That's what I'm saying. We're going to get to that point, but
there's so much racism and so much classism in this era.
Yes.
Just Walter Hagen. And it's like, oh, here, go dress in the stable.
Yes. Yes.
And these guys, it's like, you can come to our school, but you're not going to play football. We're going to have you run.
Yeah.
Run and make running your favorite.
Sure.
It's like, it's crazy. The rampant classism and racism.
But these are topics that are,
and I love that he's breaking these barriers.
Yes. But these are topics that, in my opinion, of all this, topics of classism and racism, these are issues that go back throughout the entire course of human history. They go back to the entire course of human history. Like the Romans used to have civil wars over this. They used to, Julius Caesar, they, say he was becoming a tyrant. They stabbed him in the back. These are issues that go back throughout human time. That's why they say, like, there's no perfect governments and all this, but there's some are better than others, like the American form of republic. Like that's a whole nother thing. But what I'm saying is that this, at least in our American history, this is part of the story of, and really a neglected story of a university that has have to face with its own racism, right? Yeah. It's like I hate talking about the social justice thing too much, but this is an obvious case, and this is a guy who was breaking barriers. Yeah. However, that being said, we're going to get to the end. When we get to the end of Willis Ward's story, his legacy is a complex one. Okay. Right. It's not as clear cut as just a guy who opened doors and did all these things and persevered and did like the most clear cut, if it was a little bit more clear cut, there'd probably be movies made about him all over the place. Yeah. But it's not. And that's what I mean. And so that's why we're, that's why it's a deep subject. And I wanted to do an overview and let people kind of view this stuff for themselves.
These things are so perfect for a Netflix special.
It is, but that's what I'm saying, but as long as it's covered the way that it happened. Yes. And to leave the viewer deciding the legacy for themselves, rather than picking and choosing and cherry picking the best and the most the elements that are stylizing it and making it shaped to fit a narrative or whatever.
Show warts and all.
Exactly. Presenting it for what it is and allowing those. And that's what I want to do today really is to bring it out and let people judge for their own self.
All right. So
him getting into Michigan is a story unto itself. And in the article,
but he was considering something else because
he was talking about Dartmouth initially because I think that he could have gotten an opportunity to play football there. So there's like I say, UofM has a ton of there's a ton of books written on this. Right. There is a ton of articles written on this. There is an entire exhibit on Willis Ward in the Bentley Historical in the museum. There's Bentley Museum at University of Michigan on Willis Ward. Mm-hmm. This is a complex subject for UofM. This is a big subject for UofM, and they have discussed it in great length.
I'm a proud Wolverine.
Are you really? You went to Michigan?
I did my undergrad.
Oh, yes. Did you really? I didn't know that. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, I thought you went to State.
No. I got my journalism endorsements later at State.
Oh, did you? That's
and I got my master's at Wayne State.
Oh, did you really?
I have lots of sweatshirts.
You're
I got lots of sweatshirts.
Yeah, I guess so. That's awesome. I didn't know that. Yeah. So anyway, so Bentley has this. So there's a tremendous work, to accompany the museum at Bentley. Mm-hmm. They have this online exhibit as well. And it's I've seen a lot of online historical exhibits, and they're usually like foo-foo, like just, a couple paragraphs about something or other. This one on Willis Ward is deep. Wow. I mean, it's in depth. And that's right. there's a lot to it. And it's, I give a lot of credit to it. It's more of like, it focuses a lot more on the social aspect of it than it does like all the huge accomplishments. So I was like kind of, mashing a few other sources together to actually get the information. But there's a lot of, especially when it comes to the racist elements and the barrier breaking and stuff. That's, they really dive deep into that. All right. So anyways, this comes from this exhibit, or from this online Bentley exhibit, and it's easily found by just looking up Willis Ward, and and then it'll be like one of the top 3 links. It's like it'll say Bentley, and it's highly encouraged if you want to really dive into it. There's books on Willis Ward.
We'll put the link in.
I think the lady that was the lead writer for this Bentley exhibit online, I think she's got a book, and it's I think she's got a book titled more. I think it's called More Than a Game. I think that the online exhibit is based off of her book.
All right, so we'll have links to that. Yeah, we'll have links to the exhibit.
So the article overall is called More Than a Game, and it's this online Bentley Archives exhibit. So all right, but anyways, so I just want to read like a passage because they do a really good job. I could just try to summarize it, but they do such a great job of discussing the intricacies and the many people that are involved. So I'm just gonna read it. So okay, yeah. All right, so Willis Ward was well aware of that African American students played an university game for Michigan since George Jewett in 1892. Director coach a way, and although one was awarded a reserve letter, was allowed to play in a varsity game. Though the rule was never explicitly stated, it was well known among African Americans locally and in Black communities around the country. Philadelphia Tribune sports editor Randy Dixon summarized the rule in a January 11th, 1934 column on The Situation at Michigan. They say that old Pop Yost, and this is the quote from the article, They say that old Pop Yost, when he relinquished the reins as grid mentor several years ago, bequeathed as a heritage the slogan, "No Negro shall ever represent Michigan in football."
Yikes.
Yeah, yikes. That's pretty specific.
And the ice arena is named after that guy. Do you think they'll change the name of that?
I don't know. But it's, again, it's not, this is articles they're talking about,
dude, not cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So anyways, whether or not Yost literally spoke those words, it is unquestionable that a large part of the African-American, she says it right here. Whether or not Yost literally spoke those words, that's the controversy. They don't know for sure.
Sure.
Right? It is
the practice and the proof is there wasn't any.
Yes. But the question, but it also becomes too is how many African Americans were playing high school football. Was Michigan is a superpower juggernaut at this point.
Yes.
They did have a black player as a reserve. If it was 0 black players whatsoever, why would they even have a reserve?
Yeah, but
player?
Eddie 6 touchdowns.
That's
didn't get to play.
But Eddie also said he had a knee injury.
Might have been,
and he wore a wrap on his knee his entire career. And Eddie never explicitly said it was they wouldn't let him play.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? That was the controversy.
It's hazy.
That's what I'm saying. So any talk about removing his name and all that would be premature because even this author who the focus of this is she is a very sympathetic writer towards the social justice aspect.
Right.
And even she is saying whether or not Yost literally spoke those words, it is unquestionable that a large part of the African-American community and the African-American press in particular believe them to be true.
Sure.
And
it's almost it could very well be a self-fulfilling prophecy too. So I'm not going to go to Michigan. I'm not going to try because they won't allow.
Exactly.
And then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes. So such racist segregation unquestionably existed in other sports at Michigan.
Yeah.
Dixon's column was spurred by the news that Franklin Lett, an African-American all-state player from Battle Creek, Michigan, had not been allowed to compete on Michigan's freshman basketball team. So there was another sort of situation that, right? So recruiting Ward. So as a high school senior, Ward did not even consider applying to Michigan and was set to enroll at Dartmouth until Marshall Parker, the only African-American clerk employed in the Wayne County Circuit Court, arranged an interview for Ward with Judge Guy Alonzo Miller, a U of M alumnus. Miller had been a star pitcher for U of M in 1895 to 1898 and captain of the 1897 baseball team. He graduated from the literary department in 1898 and the law department in 1900. He was active in Republican politics, served in the Michigan House and Senate, and in 1924 was named to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit. On the bench, he was a liberal, particularly in race, and was peripherally involved in the notorious Ossian Sweet case, according to one descendant. Sweet, an African-American physician, and 10 others were charged with murder in 1925 after he and 2 of his brothers and a number of friends used firearms to defend themselves in Sweet's home against a hostile white crowd protesting his family's move into a Detroit neighborhood. And so there's a whole nother bit about the case. We'll move on. Miller was interested in Ward's situation and the opportunity it presented and asked Parker, the court clerk, to arrange an interview. Believing nothing would come of it, Ward agreed to meet with the judge, mostly as a favor to Parker. When Ward explained his decision to attend Dartmouth and mentioned Yost's rule, Miller asked, "Well, will you help us break this rule?" Ward agreed.
Nice.
"Will you help us break this rule?" And Ward agreed.
Nice.
So it takes somebody to say, "Let's break the rule."
So yeah,
right? It's an unwritten rule,
and
it's not break. It's etched in granite. And so this is this is what's we're going to keep going here. But this is going to be a signature thing for Willis Ward. This is a big deal. He's breaking the color barrier.
So it was a couple other people motivating him to do this and saying, "Hey, we're behind you. We got your back. Let's do this." All right.
So Miller then enlisted attorney James Murfin, a U of M regent and former member of the board in control of intercollegiate athletics, and industrialist Fred Mathai, head of the Detroit Alumni Club, to convince coach Harry Kipke to recruit Ward. It didn't take much persuading. Kipke and the football staff certainly would have been aware of Ward through football circles and at the extensive press coverage Ward had received. And the fact that in the previous 2 years he had been the outstanding athlete at the interscholastic track meet held at U of M's Ferry Field. Kipke himself was not opposed to recruiting black athletes. He had played on integrated high school teams in Lansing, Michigan, and in the outfield in 1923 with Rudy Ash, U of M's first black baseball player since brothers Fleet and Weldy Walker in 1882 to 84. When asked if he would play a black athlete, Kipke reportedly responded, "You're darn right I'll take that kid."
Athlete of the year for the state of Michigan. Get him some cleats.
Would ask, he's like, would ask me to play, like, darn right, I'll take him. Kipke went to the Ward home in Detroit and convinced a skeptical Henry, which is his father, that his son would be happy if he came to Michigan to play football, run track, and get an education. Nice. Powerful backers. Kipke did have to battle Yost, some of his coaches and alumni who wondered why Michigan needed an African-American player since it had been winning without them. Ward recalled hearing from credible sources that on more than one occasion, in places like the Detroit Athletic Club or alumni gatherings, Kipke took his coat off and was prepared to fight with those who bitterly opposed having a Negro play for Michigan. And so,
I think we have
say it wouldn't be the last time
another hero in this episode too. We got two.
Henry Kipke. Kipke was at Champions Day. He was at the celebration at the Michigan Kipke. Whenever you're reading these,
cheers to him,
cheers to Kipke. Yeah, he was awesome. And whenever there's City of Champions talk, they mention the Kipke all the time.
But he was the college football coach at the time.
U of M. Yeah.
How did Michigan do that year?
Well, we're about to find out.
All right.
Just because Willis Ward is joining Michigan.
How's he?
It's funny you should ask.
How did Michigan do in 35? How did they?
Well, we'll get to that. So he's
I want to know how high he jumped.
Yeah.
And I want to know how Michigan did in 35. All right. Keep going.
So here the actual 35 year I gotta queue up because I don't actually have that year because I think it's right outside the boundary of what we're talking about, which is could you take a look at the U of M's record in 35? Because it's actually outside the boundary of what we're talking about.
Okay.
Just by a hair. Yeah.
Was he playing in 35?
I think he played football all the way through 34. So I forgot. I didn't get the 35 on here. I forgot. Michigan didn't do that great in 35. But anyways, when he first comes to U of M, they're awesome. So 31 is he's on the freshman team, but 32 is that's they qualify that really as his freshman year. But it was like his second year of college eligibility or whatever. It's kind of murky as far as his classification because some people say it's like 31 is his freshman. Anyways, so like his when he goes to U of M, he is regarded as one of the greatest athletes in U of M's history. Okay, it's like we're just like a lot of this stuff we're just gonna have to rip through because there's it's just like there's so much.
Yeah.
But in answer to give you like context about the NCAA, or as far as the high jump record at the time, or like to give you context.
Yeah.
So his freshman year, 1932 on varsity, so he wins the high jump championship with a jump of 6 foot 7.5 inches. And to put that into context, again, 6 foot 7.5 inches for the high jump. To put that into context, the gold medalist at the 32 Olympics, which was that same year that he was a freshman at Michigan, the gold medalist in the 32 Olympics was a Canadian named Duncan McNaughton.
Yeah,
and he jumped 6 foot 5.5.
The current high school record is 7 feet 6 inches.
Jeez. Well, they've had 80 years to build on.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying it's not
6 foot. What is it? How far is it?
7 foot 6 inch.
Okay, so they've jumped an extra foot.
Yeah,
about 11 inches.
But that's not too far afield.
Well, what's it going to be another 80 years? They're going to be jumping 8-9 feet.
I don't know. We're going to keep watering.
Like the record's not just going to stay stagnant and never grow,
Water in the grass.
That's kind of what's kind of cool about athletics is that people kind of keep pushing the boundaries because their athletic abilities keep getting better and better.
Yeah.
But so anyways, so that's crazy that it's actually gone up a foot, but what I love, what was interesting is that his record is better than the gold medalist at the 32 Olympics. So like he could have potentially been in the Olympics at that exact moment and won the gold medal. Like that's how good he was.
Mm-hmm.
So he does. So as far as play football, Willis Ward is the first Black U of M football player since 1890. What'd she say? 93.
Yeah.
He started 4 games at end. And U of M in his first year on varsity wins the national championship with an 8-0 record. They're undefeated, 8-0 record, and they outscored their opponents 123-13. Wow. So they're a dominant team.
Yeah.
In the way that like it isn't just like, we started 4 random games. No, he like started like the last 4 games of the year because he'd been like slowly working his way into the lineup and proving himself. And once he got into the starting lineup, he stuck. I mean, this is a freshman on the varsity year. and he's a stud. They're saying he's like, I mean, he's a tremendous, and he's only going to get better. So in 1933, the Associated Press calls Willis a one-man track team, because he's just there. The U of M is just crushing at track and everything. So the U of M wins the indoor and outdoor Big Ten championships, behind Willis Ward and all these, points he's getting and all this. What's it? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So there's there's just lists of all the different events he's winning. Time Mag, he starts to get a ton of national coverage. There's a couple different Time Magazine articles that talk about him. One of them, they talk about that he is not only, they're just listing off his achievements in Time Magazine, saying there's this new guy in town, he's awesome. But another thing that happens in 1933, which is especially worth mentioning, is that there's an honor society called the Sphinx Junior Honor Society. Yeah. And it was it's like, I mean, you have to be like nominated for it and all this, it's an academic thing. And he's the first black man inducted into that gets into the Sphinx Honor Society. So this is a guy who's intelligent as well. He's not just a pure athlete.
Right.
And that's I think one of my favorite elements of him, especially when we're going to talk about like his post athletic career, because this guy goes on to some big things.
So who played center for Michigan in 1933? Are you getting there?
Yeah. Well, you can mention him right now. Yeah, Gerald Ford, future president.
Ford.
Yeah.
He was in 1933. He was the center, President Ford.
Yeah, I had a great picture I was going to send you, but I just didn't put it. You can find some pictures online.
Yeah,
He's a great. There's some great shots of him. Especially when you see him, like, a lot of us remember him as the president, but when you look at him as the U of M football player, he's a beast.
Right.
He's like he looks mean, man.
I know.
So anyways, Big Ten championships, Time Magazine's mentioned him. This guy's growing into national presence. So in 1933, he starts all 8 games of the U of M football, and in the U of M wins their second consecutive national championship and also an undefeated season again. So 2 years in a row, undefeated and national championships. And so anyway, I just want to mention too, if we're talking about Gerald Ford, he was a beast in that time, but the beast of all beasts is Chuck Bernard. And that's another guy. At some point, I want to do a dive into him. I want to do a deep dive into Chuck Bernard, like we're doing a Willis Ward today, because Chuck Bernard was for the center. He was the center, and Chuck Bernard is one of the greatest, and he's one of the greatest college football players of all time. Chuck Bernard is a freaking monster, and he was the center. Because he ended up signing with the Lions in 1934. He was their first like big college recruit signing. Yeah. Chuck Bernard signed with the Lions in 1934. When they first came to Detroit, Chuck Bernard was a center for the Lions. And he was that guy. When we get to him, he was a beast. And he was an important guy because he's like a first overall draft pick is today. Like he's like this like major figure. Like he's the center of the undefeated Wolverines who just won. He was the center for 2 straight, undefeated national championships. And he was a superpower. Like Willis Ward was awesome. Yeah. But Chuck Bernard was a monster. He was one of the greatest of all time.
So it's people listening to the audio podcast, you miss out on some of the stuff we do as we stream it onto Facebook and YouTube. The videos, that's Gerald Ford.
Yeah.
That's Gerald Ford there at center for Michigan.
But even Gerald Ford's like, Gerald 33. But even Gerald Ford's like, dude, Chuck Bernard was a beast.
Yeah.
Like Chuck Bernard was a beast, man. Like, Gerald Ford. I think Gerald Ford was a bit of an understudy for Chuck Bernard until Bernard left, and then he was a full-time center. But because Chuck Bernard was a monster, and we're gonna get to him at some point. But he was like, but when he went sign with the Lions, it was a major deal because they were like, there's this new team coming to Detroit. And Chuck Bernard was incredibly well known to all the U of M fans and faithful and all this because he was such a star. And then they're like, Chuck Bernard signed with the new Detroit football team. That was a major get for them. Anyways, so Chuck Bernard is part of this team as well. He's a beast. And so again, second straight undefeated season. In this case, Willis Ward is an honorable mention All-American at ends. It's an All-American, and so he finishes up the Ward does
20.
Chuck Bernard.
That's
talked to him quite a few times.
27 is my number.
Is it really?
That was my number, my scroll number in the fraternity.
Yeah. So he's
anyway.
So anyways, Willis Ward is honorable mention All-American at end, and then the other end, I forgot his name. I didn't write his name down, but the other end was a straight up All-American.
Right.
So they have an All-American at one end. They have an All-American at one end. They have an All-American, an honorable mention All-American at the other end. And I know that Chuck Bernard was an All-American center. I mean, they had All-Americans up and down that team. It was just a beast. Those couple of years of U of M football, it's really worth your time to look up because they had some absolute studs. There's a guy named Everhardus. He was a back. He was a stud for them too. But anyways, and then in 1933, Willis Ward is the Big Ten Athlete of the Year. He loses. He's second only by a couple of points. So there's 55 total votes, and Willis Ward gets fifth, so he gets second place with 15. The first guy, his name is Dwayne Purvis of Purdue. He gets number one with 17 votes.
Oh wow! That's
so
close.
So he gets 17, and I didn't even look up Dwayne Purvis, but he had to have a crazy year too in order to beat out Willis Ward, because Willis Ward is like setting records and doing all this and playing football as an All-American end.
Yeah.
So Dwayne Purvis, and I've heard his name before. I can't place his exact accomplishments. But anyways, so he wins. He's second for the Associated Press Big Ten Athlete of the Year, 1933. And then in 1934 which is I guess technically his junior year, he is just winning races like it's going on a style. Like he swept the 60-yard dash, high hurdles, high jump in five indoor meets, and he does the same in those same races. He sweeps all those events in the Big Ten Conference Championship. And then that was the indoor championship, and then there was a outdoor championship in which he wins half the events, but then like pulls a muscle in one of it, and pulls a muscle and like doesn't finish the other ones. But but the only problem is that football, their football team has a 1-7 record. Like a lot of these guys were gone. Like Chuck Bernard was gone at this point, and a lot of these other studs had like gone to the NFL or whatever. So U of M has a regression in their football team, but this 1934, this is a major pivot for like the rest of Willis Ward's story. And again, this is it's going to require me going into this is I'm just reading this off of Wikipedia because it's easier. It's just going to canvas the event. There's a ton of different stories on it, but this is going to be a defining moment in Willis Ward's life, and it's one of the things that comes up almost every time you even look him up. Yeah, because this was the thing that okay, so I'll just get into it because we'll just be able to discuss it. So it's the 1934 Georgia Tech game. Okay, I'm just reading this off of Wikipedia just because it's just a layout of facts. So despite his many accomplishments, the event for which Ward is most remembered is the game he did not play. In 1934, Michigan had scheduled Georgia Tech as the third game of the season. After learning that Michigan had an African-American player, Georgia Tech football coach and athletic director W.A. Bill Alexander refused to allow his team to take the field if Ward played. As early as the fall of 1933, Alexander wrote to Yost asking what was going to be done about Ward, asserting that his team would not take the field if Ward played. As the game approached, word spread that Georgia Tech was insisting that Ward not play and that the administration might capitulate to the demand. Ward's right to play became a major controversy on the campus. Mass meetings and demonstrations were held. Some students and faculty demanded that either Ward must play or the game should be canceled. Petitions were circulated and formal protests were lodged with the university by the Ann Arbor Ministerial Association, the NAACP, the National Student League, and many other groups. The student newspaper, the Michigan Daily, opined if the athletic department forgot it had Ward on its football team when it scheduled a game with Georgia Tech, it was astonishingly forgetful. If it was conscious of Ward being on the team but scheduled the game anyway, it was extraordinarily stupid. Time magazine ran a story about the uproar on Michigan's campus. 1,500 Michigan students and faculty members signed a petition asking that the team's star end, Negro Willis Ward, be allowed to play against Georgia Tech. According to Time, 200 campus radicals threatened to prevent the game from being played by standing in the middle of the field. Rumors of a sit-down protest on the 50-yard line during the game spread across the campus in the week before the game. One alumnus recalled that the night before the game, bonfires lit all over the campus, echoed with screams of student anger, and "Kill Georgia Tech" was heard throughout Ann Arbor. In an attempt to thwart any attempt to disrupt the game, Yost hired a Pinkerton agent to infiltrate the United Front Committee on Ward, a conglomerate of student organizations that supported Ward's right to play. Athletic authorities argued that Ward should not play because it would be discourteous to Georgia Tech, and he might be injured. There was fear that if Ward played, he would be injured by malicious blows after the play had ended. Playwright Arthur Miller, then a writer for Michigan Student Newspaper, learned firsthand about the strong resistance among the Georgia Tech team to playing on the same field with an African-American athlete.
Yeah, they said they wouldn't take the field if he was playing.
Yeah, and so in his biography of Miller, Enoch Brader noted that Miller had friends from Arkansas who knew one of the Georgia Tech players. Brader described Miller's involvement this way. Remmel Miller's friend from Arkansas took Miller with them to meet with members of the team to protest, but also to appeal to the athlete's sense of fair play. Miller was right in the middle of this. Remmel recalls, not only did the visiting team rebuff the Yankee Miller in salty language, but they told him they would actually kill Ward if he set one foot on the Michigan gridiron. There's so much to it. It goes on. I was right. So we're just going to get to the point. In the end, Ward was not allowed to play.
No.
They wouldn't let him play.
Well, because Kipke was going to field him.
Yeah.
But Yost, who was the athletic director at the time, became the athletic. He overrode it and benched him.
Yeah, exactly.
Gerald Ford. Do you have that about? Gerald Ford was going to sit out. Gerald Ford said, if you bench him, I will quit the team.
Yes.
But Kipke and Ward convinced Gerald Ford not to quit.
Yeah. So it says, in the end, Ward was not allowed to play, but in exchange, Georgia Tech agreed to reciprocate by benching their own star end, Hoot Gibson. As his teammates faced Georgia Tech, there are conflicting reports as to Ward's whereabouts. According to Time, Ward sat out calmly in a radio booth, watched his teammates defeat the Southerners 9-2, earning what turned out to be their only win of the season. According to Behe, Ward was not even allowed to watch the game from the press box or even the bench of his own stadium. Instead, he spent the afternoon in a fraternity house. A third account states that Kipke quietly sent Willis Ward off to scout another Michigan game in Wisconsin. The day after the Georgia Tech game was played, an editorial ran in the Michigan Daily stating that everyone who touched the Ward affair did so only to lose in respect and esteem. In Georgia, some sports journalists and fans blame their player exchange for the loss. Journalists, so they blame. They're like, "Well, we only lost because we gave him our star end,
but we
gave him up so that we didn't have to play up against a black guy." That's that's an insane argument.
Yeah,
he's like, "Well, we only lost because we sacrificed our best end." We're like, "Well, Michigan sacrificed their best end because you wouldn't play if you came on the field. You're just freaking jerks." That's a terrible argument. So in Georgia, some sports journalists and fans blame
Michigan lost though.
No, Michigan won. It said it was their only win of the year. They finished 1-7. So it said
it said Michigan went on to lose the game.
It said watched his teammates defeat the Southerners 9-2, earning what turned out to be their only win of the season. It says they won. What are you looking at?
A Chat GTP article.
Oh man, no, that's just gonna rot your brain. Get off that Chat GTP, bro. So anyways, I said
this was 34.
30. Yeah, this is 34. In Georgia, some sports journalists and fans blame the player exchange for the loss. Willis Ward. So journalist Ralph McGill said Willis Ward won the football game, arguing the loss of Gibson hurt Georgia Tech more than the loss of Ward hurt Michigan.
1-7. Yeah, they were 1-7.
So that's what he's saying. So they're going, we only lost because we had to give up our best end, because they let. It's just a terrible argument.
That's the only game they won.
So Gerald Ford's role in the Georgia Tech controversy. The school's refusal to play Ward in the Georgia Tech game later became part of the public legacy of President Gerald R. Ford. Ward recalled that he met my man Jerry during freshman orientation in 1932, and the two became friends and roommates when the football team traveled for road games. When Ford learned that the school had capitulated to Georgia Tech, some accounts indicate that he had quit the team or threatened to quit in order to make a statement and take a stand because Willis Ward was his friend. Ford wrote about the Georgia Tech incident in his autobiography, recalling that he felt the decision to keep Willis out of the game was morally wrong. I went to Willis himself. He urged me to play. Look, he said, the team's having a bad year. We've lost 2 games already, and we probably won't win anymore. You've got to play Saturday. You owe it to the team. I decided he was right. That Saturday afternoon, we hit like never before and beat Georgia Tech 9-2. Years later, Ford wrote that the Ward incident had influenced his thinking about race. Ford noted his sacrifice led me to question how educational administrators could capitulate to raw prejudice. Ford used the story to voice his support for UofM's affirmative action admissions policy, saying, do we really want to risk turning back the clock to an era when the Willis Wards were isolated and penalized for the color of their skin, their economic standing, or national ancestry? So it keeps on going on and on. This is a huge, there's a huge, I could just keep reading on and on, but the The stuff we're going to read is the stuff that me and you are going to talk about right now, which is this idea that like they capitulated, you know what I mean? They just, that's like, they capitulated to the demands that you pull the guy. And the thing that I don't understand is, this is the thing that I don't understand about this.
Yeah.
Willis Ward had already been playing for them, won them 2 national championships. He'd already been a fixture on the team for 2 years. I could understand. I'm not justifying it, but I'm saying I can understand if it was the first game in the first season or whatever that he's playing. Yeah. And he runs up against the team and like, I'm not playing against that guy.
Because he was breaking that barrier.
He's breaking the barrier. He already broke the barrier.
Yeah.
It's like
but it wasn't like this was the game that, you know.
Yeah. And that's the thing is,
so
it's like Jackie Robinson, 2 years after Jackie Robinson has played for the Brooklyn Dodgers, 2.5 years later, some random team's like, well, I'm not playing if Jackie Robinson's in there.
That would be Lou Gehrig.
No, he wasn't like that. That's not true. But there's
no, Ty Cobb.
No, but even that is overdone, overplayed. The Ty Cobb thing. That's over sensationalized by many accounts. Ty Cobb played in Cuba. He played against Cubans I also heard that I believe he played against black players when on barnstorming tours too. So there's been an effort to correct the record on a lot of the Cobb stuff in recent years. Yeah. But anyways, he
was responsible for the first strike in baseball.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because because he punched out a fan and they banned him from a game and the rest of the Tigers sat out. And then they played with a bunch of college kids and got stomped 20 to something. But anyways, but this is what's so ridiculous. It's what's so ridiculous is that why, like, number one, Georgia Tech, like, refusing to take the field against Ward. Like, when did they book this game? Usually when you book a game, it's kind of like we were talking about with the Portsmouth Spartans. You're looking to like book big name teams and all this.
Sure, yeah.
So Michigan had more prestige than Georgia Tech did. You know what I mean? Like the shine of Michigan was helping Georgia Tech. Michigan just coming off of 2 undefeated national championship seasons. When they booked the game with Georgia Tech, Georgia Tech was the one benefiting from playing against Michigan because of all the prestige they were facing. Even if they got beat, they're playing against a major team.
Right.
So this is what I don't understand. Like, if they were going to book a team with Michigan, they know when they're going to be facing a guy with a black athlete. So why would they? It makes no sense for them, like, at the last minute to go, "Whoa, we're not going to play against them." This is a perspective I've not seen from any of these articles I've read. That's why I kind of cut off from reading a million different things that people are talking about, all the different writers debating or whatever, because we're going to talk about it. We're talking about it ourselves. Yeah. And the thing that what this stinks of is some kind of a pre-planned scenario or situation, because again, what we've talked about with the Spartans, which is that teams sought to play each other, especially in this early era, based on the prestige. Like, Georgia Tech was not in the Big Ten. They're not an Ohio State team. They're not compelled to play them. So when they signed the books to say, hey, we're going to, the contract to say we're going to come north and play UofM, or wherever they played, maybe they played them in Georgia. I didn't even notice that part of it. But what I'm saying is, when they signed the deal to play Michigan, they knew that a guy on their team, they had a black man on their team, was a major national star that helped them win 2 national championships, and that should have been part of the whole kit and caboodle. As far as who they're playing against. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Like, that should have been part of the deal. So this is what it doesn't make sense. This is why it doesn't make sense to me. It's not just some random thing where they're like, oh, hey, we didn't know that there's a black guy on your team. We're not going to face off against you. This goes back. This was somebody out there wanted this controversy to explode like this.
Sure.
Somebody, and I've not seen this perspective anywhere. Again,
it was played in Michigan.
Oh, was it playing Michigan? Okay, good. Yeah, so that's what doesn't make sense either. Because if you're Michigan, you have the upper hand in this situation. Yeah. You can say, well, guess what, Georgia Tech? Go kiss our rear end. Kiss our rear end.
We don't need you for the conference record.
We don't need you. We're national championships 2 years running undefeated. Yeah. We don't need you in our big house. We'll play against anybody else. That's what I'm saying. Like, this, to me, this stinks of somebody somewhere or two figures in power positions that are saying we want the controversy for one reason or another. But even whoever planned it, it doesn't work out great, because what do you gain from it? Mm-hmm. Just national exposure, and then dredging up basically a mini civil war. I played it out of NCAA. Just doesn't make any. It's really ridiculous, in my opinion. It's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Who has, the whole Bono, who gains gains from this whole stupid affair, man.
Even missing this game that year in the 34 year, he was the team's leading scorer. And he was honored with the college sports writers college football All-American team.
Well, yeah, but so he
for in 34.
Yeah, so I think they scored.
Did I step on that?
No, I'm glad you meant that. I don't have that on my list here, but because there's so much different stuff.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But so there was like, I think Michigan scored like 21 points that year, and he scored 12 of them. Like he was like the leading scorer of their team. But this,
yeah,
but I just want
God, yeah, it is 9.
But just focus on this concept for another second. It's so bizarre.
21
it's
points,
so bizarre. It makes no sense. It's almost like there's a couple of people that wanted this situation to explode, because you saw, we started like when I had to cut myself off from reading anymore because they're like, this article said this and that article said this, and these people were flipping out and they were going to do a protest in the middle of the field and they were going to do this and they were going to do that. It's like somebody wanted this to happen.
Yeah.
Right. And the question about it always emerges is the question to always, to fall back on when you're in a situation where something doesn't make sense, is to fall back on the question of cui bono, who gains out of this? And it doesn't make sense to me. I'm still trying to process.
Well, it's still happening today with protests, and when there's an incident in a city and then there's a court case and then there's riots afterwards. It's like, how did these things erupt?
Well, in that
and
case,
they blame them.
They
blame them on outside forces coming in and
they use it to
continue
to stir the pot and to continue like sort of a political machine, sort of to speak.
So nothing new.
Nothing new. But
it was happening back here.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is that the question becomes, that's what I'm saying, like it's a weird, and it may sound like a conspiracy theorist almost, like, because
a little bit.
Well, because the thing about it is
make
that
some tinfoil
because what I'm saying is if you got two people that are racist, right? If you take, let's just say that Fielding Yost is racist as hell, and the guy from Georgia Tech is racist as hell, right?
Yeah.
What does it gain them from that from this incident coming out like this? From Fielding Yost's perspective, he's already let a black man play for 2.5 years. He got 2 national championships out of him.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't make, all of a sudden now it's just, we're going to take a stand, that doesn't make any sense. And for the Georgia Tech guy, he's coming up north to Michigan and they're causing this big stink. And he runs the risk that Michigan says, go screw yourself. We're not even going to play you.
Right.
You know what I mean? So he's running that risk. It's to take some, I guess you could say if he was a diehard racist, then he's going to be like, oh, well, I took a stand, I'm not going to play against him. But like, you're not born with the birthright of playing the UofM in this game. Like, they could just walk away from you. So that's what I'm saying. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So the only thing that, the conspiracy theorist side says, like, what if it was they wanted this big blow up brouhaha controversy in order to like put it down? You know what I mean? To say like, we fought against it, like all these protest groups and all this. But the thing that doesn't make sense with that, even with that conspiracy theorist, is that Ward sat out the game.
Yeah.
He sat out. He didn't even play. So if he was able to play, if he overcame and still played, then he would be like a Jesse Owens in the 1936 Olympics type figure, where he overcame the racism and segregation and still played anyways.
Yeah.
Still took the field regardless of the racism, and nobody else played except for his own teammates came with him. That's the storybook ending. And that didn't happen.
Right.
He sat out. And then they're like, well, we don't even know where he sat out at. He wasn't in the press box, or was he scouting in Wisconsin? Nothing from this makes any sense.
Right.
And that's why I guess, that's why this story isn't a Netflix special. That's why it doesn't have this bow tie at the end where it's like, where one thing or another happened, where he got stalemated and like the sort of like the racist one or whatever, because they didn't win either. They looked like a bunch of morons from this situation too, because they'd already let a black man help them win 2 national championships. So it didn't benefit them from, like, say, the team was already terrible. It didn't even benefit them from sitting down on the sideline. In the Georgia Tech guy, they lost the game. They didn't win anything. They even compromised and sat out their best player, and they lost the game as a result. So they didn't gain on this thing. And if there was like a social justice thing that was like trying to benefit from the protests or whatever like this, how did they gain? Willis Ward didn't play.
Yeah.
They didn't stand up and win the debate. So maybe the overall thing, and this is just pure speculation on this, maybe it was just a failure of an operation from all ends. Maybe the people that were trying to do this failed because they were trying to prevent a black man from playing. It was a terrible idea and a stupid stunt that failed. And also the people that were wanting it to be a social justice type of a scenario where Ward played and all this, they were able to overcome and use the power of the pen, the power of social justice logic and all this. The NAACP getting involved, maybe they failed too.
Yeah,
I mean that's the only thing that even makes remote amount of sense. But in either case, what we're going to see here is that the one person that really lost in this whole thing was Willis Ward himself.
Yeah,
because this destroyed Ward. This there's no bones about it. He cites this story as the reason why the rest of his career completely fell apart.
Ugh.
This is the end of the story for him. This is the end. This right here is the end of the story for Ward, and I'll tell you out of his own mouth.
Yeah.
And this is what's
what did he say?
This is what's so crazy.
This
is the end of the story for him. So there's an article.
Is it a football story or sports story?
That's why you're asking me how they did in 35. He's done.
He's done.
I don't know.
Did he just stay in track at that point?
He did run some track, but I'm going to read you a little bit of there's an article on mvictors.com.
All right, go ahead.
This is heavy. Anybody that's interested in any UofM anything, this is a really valuable site to go. They've got, this is history like par excellence on this UofM, this M Victors. I wish we had a little more time to bring some of these people on the show because they could really add some. This is the kind of a spirited debate I'd love to have with some of these people on these sites.
Sure.
About Willis Ward. This is the kind of stuff that we would I think would be a good conversation because these people are into it.
Yeah.
These people got these articles that are specific. Maybe this is something we could work on, but these people got some really great stuff. And mvictors.com is crazy. This is some super deep history on UofM stuff. Mm-hmm. So the article on this mvictors.com is called Faster Than Jesse Owens, 1935. Article was written February 21st, 2012. And so I'll just read an excerpt of it because it talks about Willis Ward in 1935. So I'm going to read a good section of this here because there's some information that's not specifically about 35, but it's cool because they talk about some of the information that's out there and it's worth hearing about some of this stuff. But if you want to have a chance to read it yourself, again, mvictors.com. The title of the article is Faster Than Jesse Owens, 1935, written February 21st, 2012. It was a pleasure to attend the screening of Black and Blue at the Alumni Association building last Thursday. A few moments during the film drew a verbal reaction from the crowd, including John U. Bacon's hilarious description of Henry Ford's henchman, Harry Bennett. But none more poignant than the gasp when it was noted that Willis Ward once defeated the great Jesse Owens on the track. In chatting with the writers, it turns out that gasp has been a common reaction at recent screenings of the film. Buddy Morehouse's of Stunt 3 sent over some more specifics on Ward versus Owens, including this clip above from March 3rd. It's referencing a photo on the article here from March 3rd, 1935. Milwaukee Journal, when the Michigan man took down the famous Buckeye star in 2 of 3 events, just a couple of months before Owens' famous day at Ferry Field. In an email, Morehouse provided additional details on their meetings. On March 2nd, 1935, Michigan hosted Ohio State in an indoor track meet in Ann Arbor. Owens and Ward raced 3 times in the 60-yard dash, the 65-yard low hurdles, and the 65-yard high hurdles. Ward beat him twice in the 60-yard dash and the 65-yard high hurdles. The winter and spring of 1935 was the only time Ward and Owens raced against each other. Owens was a sophomore. Freshman couldn't compete back then, and Ward was a senior. So this was the only time they ever faced each other. Ward quit competing in the summer of 35 because of what happened with the Georgia Tech. During the outdoor season, Ward had an injured leg, so he wasn't at his best. He and Owens only raced a couple of times, and Owens won all of those times. On the day that Owens set the 4 world records in Ann Arbor, May 25th, 1935. So there was another signature event on Ferry Field, which is what propelled Jesse Owens to national stardom.
Yeah.
He was so dominant, he won everything. But they're saying on that day, Willis Ward had an injured leg, so he wasn't at his best. He and Owens only raced a couple of times, and Owens won all of those times. So on the day that Owens set the 4 world records in Ann Arbor, which is why that day is so significant, 4 world records in the same day is incredible. Ward had to scratch from the long jump in all of the running races because of his bad leg, but Ward did win the high jump that day. So he still won the high jump against Jesse Owens on that same day. it would be interesting to know what would have happened during the outdoor season if Ward had been healthy. But Ward was healthy during the indoor season, and he beat Owens. He beat Jesse Owens. This is a U of M guy beating Jesse Owens at these events. So the timing of Ward's success on the track naturally makes folks speculate on what would have happened if Ward participated in the 1936 Berlin Olympics alongside Owens. According to the Bentley, he participated in the U.S. Olympic trials but didn't qualify. In part, according to Ward, because of the 1934 Georgia Tech crushed his competitive drive. This destroyed him as an athlete. In later interviews, Ward said that the Georgia Tech game left him disillusioned with sports and sapped his competitive spirit. He took part in the Olympic trials, but having lost the burning ambition to win, Ward, in his own words, did not train to his peak and failed to make the U.S. team. But I'm not sure he actually participated in the 36 trials. In the detailed account of U.S. trial history, the introduction to the 36 trials actually mentioned Ward in the Georgia Tech game incident, but only notes Ward's fourth place finish in the 32 trials in the high jump. So anyways, let's just keep saying. So that's pretty much the end of the story. But you see, this Georgia Tech game destroyed him. It ended his career.
Well, he's a young guy. I mean, how old is he? He's
30. He born in 1912. He's 23, 24 years old.
He's a 23-year-old guy.
Yeah.
You know, and is a black guy at this time. Going to Michigan, and they're like, "Hey, you'll play. We're gonna break down this barrier. You're gonna change this rule."
He broke the barrier.
And then 2 years later, sit down. Because Georgia Tech.
Bizarre. But that's what's so bizarre. Who's Georgia Tech? Who cares about them? Who cared about them in 30?
Right. I know.
That's what I'm saying. It makes
crazy.
no sense.
It's crazy.
It makes no sense. Michigan was the national championships. They're the one it was only the third game of the season. Yeah, they only won one game this season. That was the only game they won, but they didn't know that when they they lost their first two games. Who does to say that they didn't win the last five and had a good year?
Yeah.
Or last six games and had a good year. They didn't know it at that moment that they were like in the depths of a crap season. I mean, they lost their first two, which was down compared to the previous 2 years. But what I'm saying is, this makes no sense, dude. It makes no sense. And the biggest casualty of this nonsensical scenario story is Willis Ward's career. Yeah. He could have gone to he beat Owens in 2 out of 3 events in 1935. When Owens, just a few months before Owens, there's this, the story of Jesse Owens is this one iconic day in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
Sets for, as this guy alluded to in the article, 4 world records in U of M, and it set him into the greatest runner of all time. The greatest runner of all time. Willis Ward at that time was the greatest runner and high jumper and all this of all time.
Yeah.
Imagine if Willis Ward had gone to the Olympics with Jesse Owens and battled Owens in the 36 Olympics in front of Hitler just like Owens did.
Yeah.
That would have been with Ralph Metcalf right there too.
Yeah.
This would have been the greatest story, the greatest thing. That's the story I want to watch, the Netflix film.
Yeah.
That's the story I want to see. And that's what I'm saying. And
he got robbed of it.
But here's the thing. He himself was robbed of the competitive fight.
That's what I'm saying. He was robbed of it.
Yes, but that's what I'm saying. But this is the complex legacy of him, which is the question, which is that yes, he got robbed in the football thing, but the idea that it just completely sapped his competitive drive right then and there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? He doesn't have that. This is what I'm saying, is that he's progressing towards this story of a Jackie Robinson type story, or a Joe Louis type story, or a Jesse Owens type story, or even an Eddie Tolan type story. But it's at this one moment where it just completely goes derailed. It just derails completely. And then his career ends. It just dead set ends. And so that's what's so crazy about this story. That's what I'm saying. It doesn't have this picture book text, this classic sort of ending, but that's not to say that it doesn't have a good ending, because there's there is a postscript to this, which is the rest of his life.
Yeah. So what's next?
So the rest of his life, this guy in 1939, Willis Ward, he uses his academics, and this guy goes to the Detroit College of Law and gets his law degree in 1939. And then the rest of his story reads I'll just read it. This is off of, I've got the notes here, but I'll just, again, this is the sort of finale on the Wikipedia. This is the sort of the rest of his life, which is, so later years. So Willis Ward went on to earn a law degree from Detroit College of Law in 1939 and had a distinguished career as a lawyer and a judge. In 1964, Ward spoke out against Barry Goldwater and in favor of Michigan Governor George Romney as a possible presidential candidate.
Yep.
In 1966, Romney appointed Willis to the Michigan Public Service Commission, the state agency responsible for regulating Michigan's public utilities. Became chairman in 1973. Ward later was elected a probate judge in Wayne County, Michigan. Ward was inducted in the University of Michigan Hall of Honor in 1980 with the fourth group inducted. But so like he was a judge, man. This guy like in his took his legal
academic
career
off
went off the charts.
Yeah.
So the legacy, that's what I'm saying. That's what this story is so interesting to cover because it's not your standard formulaic, like this guy battled against racism and stood up and won and this and that. Like all these other, a lot of these stories we've covered with like Joe Louis and that, those are the textbook story endings. Yeah. Joe Louis used his fist to fight his way up and do whatever and didn't care about anybody getting in his way, or same with Jesse Owens or Jagger. But like Willis Ward, in his own words, he said that derailed him as far as his athletic career, but the guy went on to be an academic par excellence. Yeah. This guy's going on to be judges and getting his law degree and being working with governor candidates and to speak on their behalf. Like this is a guy that became a major, his thing, in contrast with Eddie Tolan, who was struggling just to find a job filing envelopes in the middle of the Great Depression.
Yeah, it was it was tough times.
So, but this guy went in a different trajectory and did his thing. That's what I'm saying. This is a story that makes you think and it makes you wonder. What could have been for his athletic career, but at the same time, there's no lament because it's not like he ended up as like a bum on the street corner because he didn't do whatever. This is a guy that did something else and made us and used through this entire story as we've gone through. This guy was at the top of his class. This guy could have done anything in life that he wanted to,
and he did.
He did what he wanted to do.
Being a judge, that's
exactly
that's a good gig. So we were talking about the 35. Wolverines and their record. So they opened their season with their rivalry against Michigan State, and they would do that. They would open the season against Michigan State, and in 35 got their butts handed to them. 34 they lost as well.
Yeah, they were bad.
But before 34, they hadn't lost to them since 1915. It was a good 15-year run.
And they were called
20-year
Michigan
run.
Agricultural College too. They weren't even Michigan. Michigan.
It was like a 20-year run.
Yeah.
And then 34, and then I think lost again at 35.
I knew 35 they didn't do very well, but I wasn't. But the thing
34 was
you don't have the roster, do you? Because I don't even know if he played on that team in 35. Because I have in my notes here that he played on their freshman team in 31.
Varsity letter winners.
And then he played all the way through 34. And he raced in 35 on the track and field. I'm just not sure if I don't know if he had his football eligibility in 35 because he played on the freshman team in 31. I'm not sure. I didn't look at that.
No, he's not.
He's not listed on the team?
He's not a reserve or a varsity. He didn't win a varsity letter.
Okay, so he didn't play. That's what I'm saying. Like that's why I didn't really have him in my notes because there's no story about him.
So, but they lost in 35. They opened the season. They lost to State, opening the season. Then they won the next 4 games against Indiana, Wisconsin, Columbia, and Penn.
Okay.
And then they went on to lose the next 3.
So
they ended up 4-4.
Yeah. Okay. So it was mediocre
for the season. In the conference, they finished 8th in the conference because they were 2-3 in their conference, but 4-4 for the.
See, I knew they didn't have a great year. That's why I didn't. That's why I mean.
It was a comeback from the 1-7 in 34. Which was like a
but it was a distant memory from their undefeated national championship seasons.
Yeah.
But that's why I didn't cover them in the books. I knew that they had a mediocre record and there was really nothing.
Yeah, in the conference they were awful.
Especially when the way that I did the research for the 35 teams is I went through the newspapers like every single day, and it was like whenever they get to Michigan, they're like UofM, they're like Michigan another loss. You know what I mean? It was like so you're not even. I went with the way that I gathered my information was I went where the story took me, and the story did not have anything.
There were no Michigan stomps this.
Yeah.
Michigan
had nothing to do with anything in 35. So that's what I mean. So that's why I'm like fairly ignorant on their 35 season. Jamie's reading it off Wikipedia because I'm like fairly ignorant on the intricacies of the 35 season.
Yeah,
because that's what I'm saying. That's where the story ends. With Willis Ward's story in football ends at 34.
That's crazy. So that the place you were talking about, that M Victor's website, I was looking at it. It's pretty cool.
It's a great site. Absolutely.
And then one guy, Greg Dooley, is kind of the spearheading on that. I'm gonna see if I can get a hold of him.
Yeah, we'd love to.
Yeah, if I can get a hold of him, we can take this conversation.
Yeah, I think it'd be like we covered this. That's what I'm saying. Is I would love to
send him this and see what.
Yeah, because that's what I'm saying. Like it's it's a subject that this is a subject that every once in a while, once in a while gets brought up, and it's like I say, I'd welcome the conversation or the debate or whatever you want to put it, because I mean, like we've put out some ideas, we put out some concepts for it, but I mean, even when I'm reading these articles and stories about these about the 34 controversy and that, it's like pretty much everybody just kind of covers what happened and the results and like all the different, like the things that were happening as a result of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, what's the legacy of it? Like, what is the legacy of this incident? Is it, like, you know what I mean? It's not your prototypical incident where it was like, where Willis Ward was like, well, I don't care, I'm going to play anyways. And UofM stuck, like Gerald Ford stood behind his friend.
Yep.
You're like, I got your back. And they're like, well, I got your way back, I'm still going to play. They still played anyways. You know what I mean? Like, well, that day we hit extra hard that day. And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't, but that you didn't stand, did you really stand up? And you're like, well, we didn't, but we're going to play because Willis Ward told us to play. And it's like, yeah, but that's not, it doesn't, I'm saying that the big thing is it doesn't fit into that prototypical story that we're accustomed to seeing with regards to those that, whenever an issue like this comes up, where people are going to stand their ground no matter what. And then therefore it drives change or it drives a conversation. It's I'm saying I don't think it drove any type of an extra narrative, because sort of all sides kind of capitulated and finished it out. Like it didn't really do anything. So and it's kind of a shame, except like I say, the biggest loser in the situation was Willis Ward, who, according to his own words, it robbed him of his competitive fire, and he's the biggest loser. And it robs us. We're also tremendous losers, because my God, how amazing would it be if Willis Ward would have gone to the 36 Olympics against Jesse Owens?
Oh, I know. It's just
he beat him twice out of 3 events.
Yeah.
And then the day of Jesse Owens' best day was because Willis Ward hurt his leg and wasn't able to really compete. So as I'm saying, that there sets the scenario, the stage.
Well, and then
for an Olympics thing.
And if Eddie Tolan hadn't
had to do vaudeville,
lost his amateur status, that would have been just like a juggernaut of speed.
Yeah. But even without Eddie Tolan, you still have Ralph Metcalf,
right? So the four, those 4 guys. Can you imagine those 4 dudes?
But with the existing Jesse Owens and Ralph Metcalf, who did go to the 36 Olympics, factoring in either Eddie Tolan or Willis Ward, either one. You know what I mean? But the thing is, that's the thing. That was one of the reasons I wanted to cover this topic, because like that article, the article, the M. Victor's article is correct when it says everybody wants to know what would have happened with a Willis Ward versus Jesse Owens, gold medal, or Olympics, because that's the thing. Because again, Willis Ward beats Jesse Owens in 2 out of 3 events, and then in the ensuing thing, Jesse Owens sets 4 world records and has the greatest track and field day ever, which catapults him into the conversation. It's right after this that Jesse Owens is appearing with Joe Louis, in these restaurants and stuff like this. And they're trying to they're doing all this stuff just to get Owens into the Olympics. Cause again, he's going to Berlin with Hitler as a master race thing. So they have to get America's support behind Jesse Owens. So they're pairing him with Joe Louis to make him palatable to the newspapers. That's what they're having everybody. Joe Louis is a beloved, growing to be a beloved figure. So they're having Joe Louis sort of rub his, have the shine, onto Jesse Owens. But that's what I'm saying. Like, imagine if Willis Ward was part of that whole thing too.
Yeah.
So, like I say, Willis Ward beats him in 2 out of 3. Jesse Owens beats him in those 4 events on his own field in Ferry Field.
Oh my God, yeah.
Which sets the stage for the dramatic showdown at the 36 Olympics for the gold medal in front of Hitler, where 2 black men are battling out to defeat the master race.
It doesn't matter about that. It would have been a race between them.
Those 2 guys, exactly.
The rest of it would have been ancillary.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. But it would have set the stage in a hyper super event between these 2 young stars of the game.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda, man.
That's what I'm saying. And it could have been a massive thing for track and field.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. It's like we're the big losers too, because
as
great as the Jesse
we missed
Owens,
out on all that.
As big as the Jesse Owens 36 Olympics was, it could have been even bigger. And was to say that Willis Ward would not have been the guy.
Would have been the one on the top podium.
Would have been the guy in the podium instead of Jesse Owens. That's what I'm saying. That's what's so compelling about this story is there's like, what if, could have, should have, whatever. You know, and it's like, it's just, anyways, that's why I wanted to present the story. There's no, if it's from where I'm sitting and from how I understand it, there is no, it's a story that is open-ended. The legacy of Willis Ward is open-ended. You know, what was his legacy? And it's like people, you can say, oh, his legacy was because he broke the color barrier at UofM in football. You could make that case. I don't have the information in front of me here that says how many black players came after him,
right.
Which is, to me, is something that maybe I should have looked up before I got on the show when I was pressed for time. But in how many, and, you know, was it another 10 years before another black player played in the UofM? You know, black players didn't start coming in the NFL for, you know, another couple of decades, I believe, when it was to the 50s. So that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, you could say, yeah, he was the first black player since 1893. You know, he broke that color barrier for sure. But how long did that barrier stay? You know, was that barrier removed? How long was that door open for others to follow? How, you know, you see them saying like the legacy of Willis Ward, at least from the athletic perspective, is an open question. And I would absolutely love to have some of these people that, you know, are far more versed in this subject than myself to come in to have a conversation with and to you know, to put the case forward for the intricacies of this story that, you know, that I don't know. And you certainly don't know.
Yeah. I
would love to know.
You
more.
Don't know, and I really don't know.
You don't know either. But we know, we both know enough to know that we don't know shit about the last component of this.
Yeah.
And I would love to actually know more. And especially if there's people that are obviously that have been, you know, like I say, when you actually dive into Willis Ward, and you listening at home, look up Willis Ward and just look at the articles of that, man. There's people that are really into this story. But the question, like I say, I would love to hear their perspective. I would love to pick their brains about the legacy of Willis Ward and about, you know, just their perspective on on his life and towards the end of his career. Really, I think that's the number one question is, at least in my mind, is the legacy of Willis Ward.
Yeah.
Because again, this is a name that few people are familiar with. I didn't know who the heck this guy was. I didn't know who he was until I even was looking into Eddie Tolan and saw this picture. They're like, this is Willis. You're looking at this picture with Eddie Tolan. You're looking into Eddie Tolan and you're like, I know Eddie Tolan because I've been studying him now. And then I see Jesse Owens and I'm like, I know who Jesse Owens is, but who's this third guy that they're buddy with? And I see him with Willis Ward from UofM. I'm like, who's this guy? And then you start to look into him and you're like, I don't know how I should feel. Like, I don't know what the legacy should be. And it leaves that, again, it's,
he's got
redundant at this point.
He's got a grandson, Samuel Buzz Thomas, served in the Michigan House of Representatives and the Michigan Senate. And he has a Thomas Group Consulting, in Detroit. I'm reaching out to him too.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. But because the thing is I just want it to be known, I'm a massive Willis Ward fan.
Yeah.
I'm a massive Willis Ward fan. And one of the regrets from this whole City of Champions thing was that because I mean, if Willis Ward would have gone to the Olympics in 36, this is a guy that potentially could have been added to this pantheon of champions of the City of Champions story, because he's, in 35, if he had been done his thing, won championships and set world records in the high jumps and all this, and then also gone to the Olympics in 36, he would have been right in the same vector of time, and he would have been among this pantheon of champions. It would have been instead of 33, would have been talking about 34.
Yeah.
And so anyways, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is the guy that's what I'm saying. I would love to talk with anybody else. I mean, like I say, it's not a debate.
Good. I think it's a shame that it again, it wasn't a 35 championship, so it's hard to pull it into the book.
It is.
But he's an amazing story.
But it's like, it could have been. It should have been. It should have been like this incredible fact. It could have been thing, man. Yep. And that's what I'm saying. I'm a huge Willis Ward fan. I really am. I love this guy. And that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I want to bring him out to people that may not have ever heard of him.
We might scratch this again.
Yeah, we may. Yeah.
We might do this. Is that everything we had on him?
Yeah,
we
covered
I think we covered everything. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And you say his grandson is in the House of Representatives. That's a big legacy too. That's what I'm saying. Like
Michigan, the
Michigan. It's I'm saying,
House of Reps. And
I want
Senate.
to. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I want to
talk to Buzz.
This is the kind of figure that leaves you wanting to know more. I mean, that's really what it is. And it's but like I say, I'm a huge Willis Ward fan, and I just. God, I wish he was part of the 36 Olympic story with Jesse Owens. It would have been the greatest story in the world, man.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna do it again. We're gonna do more. There's so many more champions to talk about. There's so many more stories, and we'll do it. We spent a lot of time with him, but the time flew by.
It did. So I know it's a story, and I'm glad this answers a goal that I had in the book when I wrote the book, which was to talk about Willis Ward and to bring his name out and to ask this question. It's an open-ended question, and it's an open invite to anybody that knows far more about Willis Ward than I do, and,
to correct this and add to
correct it, and
add to the story.
And we, like I say, I've talked about this in previous episodes that any errors that I make as far as the information that I bring forward, I am welcome to be corrected. It's how you learn. And also, as far as my understanding of his legacy, I want to know more about this man because, like I say, I'm a huge Willis Ward fan. I want to know more about, or what other people think about, about his story, because it's, like I say, because you're sitting there, you're going, well, his athletic career came to basically an abrupt end. That's true. But, like I say, maybe the real story of Willis Ward is how it goes in a totally different direction, where he becomes this, gets his law degree and becomes a judge and becomes all these different things. And there's, and everybody focuses on the athletic part, and nobody really dives into the rest of his life, which may have been even more of a factor and more important than either of us have any idea at this moment.
We're going to dig a little more. We're going to dig a little more on this one. All right. So again, like I said, we'll do it again. Thanks for listening. Like, subscribe, leave a comment, all those podcast things. In all the podcast places, I say that it sounds a little glib, but smash that like button.
Like it right now.
Thank you.
It right now.
Do it now.
Uncomfortable pause, Jamie.
Yeah.
Like it right now. Okay.
Oh, that felt good. That felt good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Woo, that tickled a little.
I felt the likes. I felt the love from the likes.
I'm feeling it.
These people they hit the like button with love.
That is
so.
It.
Yeah.
All right. We'll do it again. It's Detroit City of Champions podcast.